So welcome to this video newsletter. In this video newsletter, we're going to be talking about what ME actually is. Because the chances are, if you're watching this, that either you or somebody close to you has been diagnosed with chronic fatigue, ME, fibromyalgia, or one of those group of illnesses. And the chances are that you're really aware that although you have a diagnosis, you don't actually probably know what's actually wrong with you. And I think this is one of the greatest causes of anxiety and fear amongst ME sufferers. And I know that this was definitely the case for me, that when I was originally diagnosed, I'd been tested for all the possible things that it could be. And at one point they thought it might be because I had a murmur in my heart. At one point it was thought it might possibly be some form of diabetes. But when they were clear that it wasn't those things, then what I had was a diagnosis by exclusion. And that's what the vast majority of people we treat with ME have got, because there's no single test that tests for ME. So what we have is a group of symptoms that are then labelled under ME or fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue, whatever it's called in your situation. But because that doesn't tell us what's actually wrong with us, when we get either a new symptom or a recurrence of a symptom or just a particularly intense symptom, or I guess in fact any symptom, what we have is this sense of fear and anxiety about what actually is going on. You know, is it something which is potentially life-threatening? Is it something that's never going to change? Are we going to have to spend the rest of our life feeling this way? This is so different to what we're normally used to with the medical system. For example, we break our arm and we go to see a doctor, and they look at our arm and they x-ray it and they say, yes, your arm is broken. It's broken in this point here. And if we put it in a splint, so we stop the arm from being moved, and maybe you take some painkillers, and they can tell you pretty accurately how long that bone is going to take to heal. And that's very much what we're used to. The same is true with a cold or a flu, that we kind of know within a day, 3 days, a week, a couple of weeks, that we know how long it's going to take for it to go away or for it to heal. And because with ME, we don't have these timescales, and we don't have the clarity of what's actually going on. What this means is we have all the anxiety about it, but it also means we can't actually accurately know what to do about it. And many people therefore get kind of lost in the huge number of different treatments that are out there that are all treating different parts of what's going on without really knowing what they accurately need. And when we have patients come into the clinic, it's amazing, and it's not surprising how much of this fear and anxiety there can be in reaction to the symptoms that are there. You know, and if you're watching this and you yourself haven't personally experienced ME, if you imagine one day waking up and having significant amounts of pain in your muscles with no reason for having done that, you know, you haven't been aggressively exercising or anything like that, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor says to you, there's nothing wrong with you. Can you imagine what happens in response to that? And if you yourself are suffering from ME, you know what I'm talking about. So what we're going to talk about in this video newsletter is how to understand more clearly what may actually be going on with you, to actually understand the different subgroups that are going on within ME. So as I mentioned, within ME, there's a whole load of different subgroups which are categorized under this blanket label of either ME, fibromyalgia, post-viral fatigue, whatever label you've personally been given. And the secret really is to understand which of those subgroups that you personally fall into. Because firstly what that does is it significantly reduces the fear and anxiety that's there. Because when you actually understand what's going on, it stops your mind constantly reacting to and worrying about symptoms that come up. But in some ways, even more importantly than that, it means you can actually choose treatments which are specifically going to be treating what's going on for you within your body. Now, the challenge we have here is this is not helped by the holistic health industry which is out there. Because what you have is practitioners which train within a specific modality, and then when somebody comes in for treatment, that's the way that they work. So for example, if you go and see a homeopath and you ask, what way should my illness be treated? If they specialize in homeopathy, they're probably not thinking in their mind, would this person be better served by working with someone that uses a certain kind of psychology or a certain kind of nutrition or a certain kind of physical treatment, that it very much falls under what they're specialist in. And this is not because people are dishonest, that's because when someone specializes in a certain area, the more they work with people in that way, the better they're going to get at it. And therefore, the more feedback they're going to get that this specific treatment can help a percentage of people with this condition. Now, you may well know that our approach as a clinic has been as much as possible to look at the bigger picture of what's going on, to do what we call truth seeking, to constantly be seeking and searching for the truth of what's going on. And we see ME like a massive jigsaw, like one of the biggest jigsaws you could ever play with, to constantly be researching all the different facets, all the different bits that could be going on. And when we initially treat somebody, one of the reasons why, for example, we do 15-minute chats is to try and find out, even at that stage, what subgroup somebody is likely to fall into. That's also why, as a clinic, we're very much driven by testing. Because if you can physiologically test to find out specifically what's actually going on with somebody, then you can find the treatment which is much more likely to benefit that person. So what we're going to talk about in a moment is the actual subgroups that are actually there. So in terms of the various subgroups that are there, obviously in a short video newsletter, I haven't got time to go into that in any great detail. But to give you some ideas of the kind of things that are worth exploring, and obviously if you want to look into this in more detail, that's what we do as a clinic. The first thing we do with anybody is find out specifically what's actually going on with that person. But to give you some ideas of things that you can look into in more detail, and in fact on this website, the Freedom from ME website, if you go into the interactive section, there's more detail on this in there as well. But one of the first things which we, for the vast majority of people, we nearly always test is mitochondrial function. What we're actually looking at here is on a cellular level, is this person metabolizing and creating energy in an optimum way? Because if somebody's energy production is 25% what it should be, we immediately know the mechanism of their fatigue. Now that doesn't tell us the cause of the fatigue, but it tells us the mechanism of the fatigue. The next thing we can then do is look at what's causing the blockage within the mitochondria. Now that's just one example. Another example is adrenal function. If somebody's adrenals are significantly compromised, for example, if we're seeing that their production of cortisol at certain points in the day is significantly low, then again we know immediately one of the mechanisms causing their fatigue. Other things we can also be looking at are things like toxicity. If somebody's taking supplements and they're constantly reacting to them, it's true for many ME people, this can be a sign of toxicity in their system. Again, this is something that can be tested for using things like blood tests, urine tests, saliva tests. So proper medical tests that can actually be showing levels that then we can compare against to see the effectiveness of any intervention or any treatment that's being used. Again, on the psychology side, rather than just saying everybody's in a state of high alert stress and anxiety, to look at what the mechanism may be that's causing that. To also be looking at, is it primarily that, or is it primarily emotions? Is it primarily somebody not being in touch with something deeper that's going on? Is it primarily trauma in the past? Now there are specific treatments that treat all of these areas, but what most treatments don't do is at the start, initially pinpoint specifically what may be going on for that person. So really my purpose within this video newsletter is really just to wake people up and give them the awareness of the importance of this. And if you're searching for a mechanism to explain what's actually going on for you, now in the kind of 2008, moving towards the end of this decade, there is a lot more information. Back when I was diagnosed back in '96, things have changed so much since then that you really should hold out to find out specifically what's going on with you. And if you want more information on that, I'm sure you're aware through the clinic, you can book a free 15-minute chat. We'll send you out a whole lot of information before that. There's no obligation, there's no sales, there's no pressure. It's simply for us to explore if we think we can help you, and for you to explore if you feel drawn to investigate things further. So thanks for watching this video newsletter. I look forward to talking to you again next month.